Hello, 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 and welcome to another Phoenix Fitness Fanatics magazine cover spotlight. We have our wonderful June spotlight, Miss Ronda Dixon. I'm going to go ahead and bring Ronda on in the room. Hello, good morning, Ronda. How are you today, hon?
Good morning, Tiffany. Thank you for having me on. I'm an entertainment lawyer and a criminal defense lawyer. I practiced entertainment law for many years, representing many big clients. One of my biggest ones was Shaggy, and he was the number one artist in 2001. He sold over 12 million units worldwide, won a lot of awards, and the song was "It Wasn't Me." Interestingly enough, I started doing criminal defense, and that's pretty much the anthem for every criminal defendant. It wasn't me. You caught me on camera. It wasn't me. You saw me on the phone. They use a lot of video surveillance and your cell phone, a lot of social media and cell phone information to convict people now. So it's really gotten bad, But I really enjoy what I do. I started doing the criminal defense portion of it because I had an experience where I had a run-in, and I wrote a book about it called The 13th Juror, which is going to be coming out hopefully in November this year. Also, I have a anthology that I wrote called The Girls Powerhouse. The book Girls Powerhouse.
It was in Becoming a Girl Powerhouse. Yes.
Yes, Becoming a Girl Powerhouse. That's it. And I'm one of several authors that has a short story in there that talks about my experience with the criminal justice system from the perspective of being a lawyer involved in it, and not on the defense side, but actually as a defendant. So I really connect with people, and I understand what they're going through, all of the stress and the anxiety and the fear that you have when you've been targeted by the criminal justice system, either rightly or wrongly. You really are innocent until proven guilty, but that's not how the system works. And it's a pretty brutal system. So you'll if you ever have the unfortunate experience of being involved in it, you'll find out that it's a pretty heavy burden to have the weight of the state levied against you, because they have a lot of resources and they're very competitive, and their goal is to prove you're guilty or prove their theory of the case, not whether or not you did it. But once they target you as a potential suspect, that's what they look for. They look for the evidence that shows and proves their theory of the case. And they kind of ignore exculpatory evidence, which means evidence that you're not guilty, because that doesn't work for them. They've already put the system in motion. They've accused you of a crime, and now they have to be right. That's basically it.
So what got you started in law? I mean, it's a tough, and it's a really tough place to be. So yeah, what got you started?
Interestingly enough,
was that always something you wanted?
Not really, actually. I would say my mom wanted me to be a lawyer. I actually wanted to be a writer. So I finally got to fulfill that. I wanted to be a writer. At one point, I wanted to be a journalist. And I actually really wanted to be a newscaster. And the interesting thing about that is the opportunities weren't there when I was younger. It was very competitive and very tough, and especially for certain people of color, they just didn't have a lot of color in that group. And I mean, I could have passed, but I didn't really. I was trying to do that, but it's a brutal business. I got exposed to that early. I had an internship, and I saw how they were very, very competitive, very brutal in that business, and very critical. They did a movie about that. They did several movies about it, but there was one where the guy said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not taking it anymore." Remember that movie? And it was about how the newscasters are and stuff. So it's really competitive and brutal. You see this, recently there was a young lady who committed suicide who seemed to have everything. She was a young Black lady. She was, I think, 28, maybe she was 30, but she was very young, and she had achieved a lot. She was a lawyer. She had an MBA. She had been an athlete, and she was on E Entertainment. And so to be a commentator on E, you get to meet all the different celebrities and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just was mind boggling that she committed suicide. But she was apparently extremely lonely, and she suffered from depression. And even though
Thank
people couldn't
God for
tell,
mental. Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of brutal. I mean, that's another thing is the environment, for female lawyers, it's a little tougher. It has been, um, historically, and a lot of the female lawyers end up tracking into being a public defender or working in public law because they're not hired into the private law firms. They don't get the big money. So that's a major reason why I decided to strike out on my own. I wasn't making the money that I wanted to make and that I knew that I was entitled to. Um, so I decided to do it myself. And also, you as a lawyer, you're held to a higher standard, and if your superior tells you to do something and it may not be quite what meets with your moral standards, or then you might want to leave. And that's what I did. I was working at a firm and they told me to do something. I was like, yeah, I'm not good with that, because the onus rests with me. So the firm wanted me to plead people out by the third. They'd give you a bonus if you pled people out by the third appearance. And that was just to get the money, get them in and out, and keep it moving. But the problem was every case is not pleable. Maybe they're not guilty. Maybe they don't give me a good plea for this person. And I'm not going to plead them out um, by the third appearance. So what happened was I set 2 cases for trial, and that was basically for me to bully the prosecutor into, really giving me a better deal. And they did actually immediately gave me a better deal because they have a bully pulpit of being the prosecutor. The deck really is stacked in their favor. There's about 97% of sitting judges are prosecutors, and that's in the civil court as well as in the criminal court. And that should concern people because not only are they prosecutors, many of them are very conservative. And many of them don't look like the defendants that they are giving heavy sentences to. So it really is not. We need diversity on the bench, and we need diversity not just from the standpoint of having more females, more people of color, more people that are diverse in gender and like disabilities. We don't have enough diversity on the bench, number one. And number two, we need to mix it up and get some defense lawyers on the bench, get some litigators, some people that are former consumer lawyers that understand what's going on. Because if I have a case, if it was civil, I would want to arbitrate it, because when you arbitrate, you can choose a judge that knows something about the business that you're in. Even when I did, entertainment law, it was really upsetting and disappointing when you go to court and the judge just doesn't get it. Same thing with construction litigation. Judge just didn't get it. So they really just pick who their favorites are. And the jury does the same thing. It's really bad because the case isn't really about the case. It's really about it's won or lost in the selection of a jury pool. And unfortunately, sometimes it's really interesting. Like in my case, the attorney that was representing me, he didn't really recuse or use any peremptory challenges. He didn't take anybody off because he was afraid, because there was a case law that said that if you took people off based on race, that you would get the judge can sanction you and the state bar can sanction you, because the DA was notorious for doing that. So they started also putting that against defense lawyers. And the judge gave him a very strong admonishment in the beginning, and I just saw him just cave, because I was like, we don't want that person. Why are we letting this person on? And we want that person. Why is that person not on? And everybody that I was telling him that we wanted on, they would have voted for me. And we had done a mock trial and gotten actors to play the people and had an actual DA, to be the prosecutor. And, we played these roles. And it worked out exactly the same way, which was that the people that were educated would tend to vote in my favor because they could understand and follow the bouncing ball. They could figure out what was going on. But the people that were uneducated, which are the ones we ended up getting, we got a jury pool of mostly retired blue collar workers that were mostly immigrants. They ended up, we found out when we told the jury later, that the main reason they thought I was guilty was because I was making $120,000 a year in 2013 after having been a lawyer for almost 30 years. Male lawyers were making a lot more, but the point is, I was running a substance abuse clinic, not an easy job.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Especially on 48th and Crenshaw. We're talking in the heart of the hood, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
I had all types of gangbangers and criminals coming into my, you know what I mean? I had to deal with a lot of tough people, but the toughest ones were my own employees. So I really didn't have a problem with the clients themselves because they were so happy to have someone helping them. And I was very passionate about helping them. And I really loved what I was doing, actually. And we had a lot of great results. But in the end, the government has their ideas about where they want to spend their money. And we found out that when Obamacare came into play in 2010, there was a meeting where the state of California met with Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Department of Corrections and decided that they wanted to redirect the drug Medi-Cal money into those institutions. Of course, after a while, there was something called Prop 109, AB 109 came into play. Not to get too technical, but there was a decision called Plata that the United States Supreme Court stated that the prisons in California were at 220% capacity, and that the overcrowding of the prisons alone was cruel and unusual punishment and a violation of the Eighth Amendment. So the court ordered California to come back down 100% to 120% capacity, which is still overcrowded, but not as severely overcrowded as 220%. Well, of course, California dragged their feet because we are one of the biggest carceral states in the nation. We incarcerate more people than some countries' population. And the bulk of those people, 80% of those prisoners throughout the state are coming back to Southern California and specifically to Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County has 40% of the state's population and 80% of its prison population.
Wow. Those stats are wow. That's crazy. So Rhonda, tell me, with just this, just being an attorney is so hard. And I want to look at the fitness aspect of it with you, and just being able to balance it, right? Because what are the things that you do to just manage your stress level and, being able to just, handle the day-to-day, operations of life, right? As well as the day-to-day operations of running and, the Dixon Justice Center and, also, being out there representing your clients. How do you balance it all? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, it's kind of tough, but I do have a personal trainer and I do weight training, resistance training. And I actually got a little muscle here finally. So I found that, it actually only takes me 20 minutes twice a week. And I lift pretty heavy weights. And so they said that if you do really slow resistance training, slow coming in, push it out like to 10, a count of 10 and put it in by 10. And then you keep yourself under tension. So before the plate touches, you push back out to keep it under tension so that your muscle will go to failure and then it will build the muscle up. It's not easy, but I do that twice a week. I try to do cardio. I end up walking around a lot at court, to be honest with you. But I have my bike, and I made sure my office is in Marina Del Rey, so I have a beautiful view of the ocean. And anytime I need to refresh myself, I can go outside. But I also have my bike at work, so like after work, I can ride. One of the reasons I decided to niche down to criminal was because it doesn't have. There are deadlines and there are motions and things that need to be done, but it's not the same as litigation. Litigation is ridiculous. The stress is unbelievable. I had a case one time where it was a celebrity, and I can't really, name the celebrity, but it was their estate. And they had put in the Frank Sinatra clause into the estate, which that means that if if they give, so he had given each one of his children $100,000 out of a multi-million-dollar estate and told them that if they contest his will, they will get nothing. That's the Frank Sinatra clause. So they took the chance to contest it because there were millions of dollars at stake. And it was such a stressful, for me, it was stressful because it was somebody that I really, really looked up to and really liked. And when we were listening to how he was in his last days and how he was treated by the medical staff, by his children, and I should say alleged children, and by his his suffering, it was upsetting to me. And while I was sitting there, and also it was a scorched earth type of thing. They wanted to have the depositions on Saturdays, all day long. My son was 5 years old. I had no one to watch him. I literally had to bring him to the law firm and have him sit in the sit out in the break room and just go out every so often to visit him and stuff. It was just ridiculous. They just wanted to do this scorched earth, no lunch breaks, refusing to take a break, refusing to let you have coffee, refusing all this stuff, because it's psychologically, after a while, it wears the person who's being questioned down. And nobody likes to be questioned, by the way. It's like, I don't know if somebody asks you too many questions, you start to get anxious, and anybody does, just any normal person would. And these lawyers, that's what they do. But we had 12 lawyers in the room, and each lawyer gets a chance to ask questions. So you can imagine when you're in the hot seat and you're being deposed, it gets ridiculous. But they were really pissed because everybody liked me. And that's because I was nice and I had a pleasant expression. And so every one of the defendants, even the ones that were on the other side, they responded to me. They spoke to me when they answered the questions, even though I wasn't asking them. They looked at me, and they looked at me for approval. And, because, I just had a more pleasant demeanor than the other guys. And they just, and they were getting really mad. So at one point during this, I actually had a stabbing pain in my stomach. And I was like, what? I'd had it a couple of times, but this time it struck me so hard that I grabbed my stomach. And the guy next to me, another lawyer, said, "Oh, that's just GERD." And I said, "What?" He said, "That's this, gastrointestinal reflux disorder." Really? And he said, "Yeah, I get it all the time. It's just a hazard of the trade." And he pulls out 5 packs of Rolaids and he says, "Here, you can have one." I'm
Oh
like,
my
I hope I
gosh.
never have to do this and just live off of these Rolaids things. And then he was
Just
telling
constant
me,
stress.
when he told me his age, I was shocked because he was like the same age as me, but he looked 20 years older. And he was a
Wow.
litigator. I only did litigation here and there, and that made me decide, nah, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
It's not enough. It's not. And then there's a public defender. I haven't seen him lately, maybe because of COVID and stuff. And I don't know what happened to him. But there was a public defender in downtown LA at the criminal courts building who had some kind of disorder that made his neck stay in like one position. And literally he had to turn his entire body to look at you, like for one sit. And I was like, why would he come to work like this? I mean,
Right.
every day he was like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. It was so sad. And I said, I hope I never, ever, ever, I'm not going to let myself get like that. No
No,
way.
and that's all the
No way.
stress. The stress,
Can't do it.
right?
So even I always
Um,
remind myself to take a deep breath. When I wake up
mhm.
in the morning, I do yoga stretches because,
Good.
to counteract the back pain that you get from sitting all the time, or I
Mhm.
had lordosis where your neck is like this from looking at, what they call it, text neck, from
Uh-huh.
looking at the computer all the time, and arms and shoulders and everything hurting. I always take inventory. Are my shoulders tight? Is my neck tight?
Yeah.
Always. And I remember to move those things because I didn't realize it, but for years I was frozen. Like I didn't realize that I couldn't move my neck. And I was like, what happened? And it was so hard. It was like a log. And the first time I got a massage, after many years, I get a massage, and I thought it was normal to be like that. My neck was like just stuck and just rigid.
That is not normal at all. No.
Thought that was
That's
normal. And then I thought having headaches all the time was normal. And if I turned my neck, it'd hurt, it would crack and stuff. Now I can turn my head. I used to be able to do like this, and I couldn't do it. I could, like, my neck would go, stop. That was from being stuck in one place for so long.
I'm glad you learned how to get in. Just that's what you
Yeah,
need.
get
Get
in
up from the
resistance.
desk, stretch, but you just get your arms up. I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
And I just remind myself every so often, and I'm going to start an alarm. Have you ever heard of something called the Pomodoro? It's based on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle,
Mhm.
that, you know, 80% of your success or whatever you do, 80% of it is based on 20% of your activity. And if you can niche down and make sure, like Stephen Covey says, you know, do the most important thing, first, or he says, then you'll always be knowing that you're doing the most important thing. Just like when you
Right.
set your goals, prioritize your goals, and whatever your first priority is, do that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
as a procrastinator, I used to do all the easy stuff first, just to feel like, hey, I did something. And then,
Get to
oh,
put the
I'll put
little
that off
things
till
done, but what about
tomorrow.
those big things,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I'll put that off till tomorrow. Oh, I got this, and this done, but I'll put that motion off until tomorrow. And then, oh my God, it's the day before it's due, and I've got a statute of limitations. I got
And
to
then
get
you
it
got
in.
all the
Yeah,
stress that you didn't need in the first place, right? So,
now I don't do that. I put ticklers. I say, okay, as soon as I walk out of court, hey, I'm going to do a motion. I'm going to do a habeas corpus. I'm going to do a Humphrey motion. I'm going to do, Humphrey motion is a bail reduction motion, and you have to have it in within 2 days, like 48 hours, because the hearing has to be done within 5 court days of the arraignment. So you have to get it in right away. And I have a paralegal. So I call my paralegal, say, hey, we're going to do a Humphrey motion on so and so. So pull the last one we did and get started on the facts, and then I'll review it when I get there, get it done early. So that's one of
right.
the things I've been doing. And I put the tickler on there. And the other day I had a preliminary hearing in an attempted murder case, and we had postponed that so many times. Part of the reason was because I was like, dang, this is freaking huge. I mean, we got all this evidence and all these people, and there's a lot at stake because attempted murder is treated the same as murder. And even
Wow.
though the person survived and, was okay and everything, um, they want to give them 25 years to life. That's another thing. They love to give these heavy, heavy penalties. And there's no upside. If he goes to trial and loses, he'll get 25 years to life. If he, during the trial, and we're trying to negotiate, I'm waiting, the district attorney said he wouldn't give me an offer. He wouldn't speak about pleas or compromising until after the preliminary hearing. But one thing the preliminary hearing did show, I did a motion to dismiss because they never did ballistics on him. They never did ballistics on the car. They were relying solely on license plate readers and the digital evidence, which was they had gotten some digital evidence, as well as there was some other evidence that they kept. They didn't quite give me a reason how they found this evidence. And I'm surmising that it must have been illegal, the way they found the evidence. And eventually, when I kept asking him questions, he said, oh, we got it from the license plate reader, you know. And so now I have to look up the case law, but he also said we got the evidence from prior contacts with the defendant. But I'm like, what prior contact? He was actually in the county jail for 2 years. You know what I mean? What I kept asking him what exactly the prior contact was. They wouldn't say. So I'm surmising that it might have been illegally obtained. You know, they didn't get a search warrant. They didn't, you know, and they are being very vague and facetious about it. So I'm going to do a motion to suppress, and just so that I can get that evidence, because they'll come back with it and tell me. So I'm going to do a motion to suppress based on that, but I have to get the transcript because there's all these things missing. They don't have the murder weapon. They don't have, so they don't have the gun. They don't have any ballistic information to show that my client actually shot the gun. They, you know, they have the car, but they claim they had his license plate number. But when I look at the surveillance video that they pulled from people's homes, it was behind a screen. You know how you have a black screen? And so when I zoom in to try to see if you can identify the driver or identify the license plate, what I get is a screen. It actually gets more blurry. Oh. Now their story, and they're sticking to it, is that they used that video. But finally, when I talked to him, I asked him questions during the preliminary hearing under oath, and he said, we probably use license plate readers, which they're not necessarily. I don't know that they're supposed to have them. You know, a lot of local law enforcement are getting these things, and they also use the U.S. Marshal. And I go, a U.S. Marshal and a narcotics team, and I go, well, this wasn't a narcotics case. Well, how do you have 9 people from the narcotics task force on a attempted murder case? I'm not sure how that works. So I'm just really going to look into all that to see what was really going on. Apparently there was some kind of surveillance going on already. So, you know, and my client was unlucky enough to be.
Our next question for you is, so what should we do? What should people do out there, you know, when they're stopped by the police?
Well, it's a good question. You know, we've had a lot of people, as we know, that have been stopped by the police and killed. And right. Unfortunately, you do have the constitutional right to resist an unlawful arrest, but good luck with that. You know, the Supreme Court is not our friend, as we have finally found out. In over 200 years of the existence of the Supreme Court, we've only had 20 years where the Supreme Court has been liberal. And under that time, we got Roe versus Wade, we had Loving versus Virginia, we had Skinner versus Georgia, and we had Miranda. Okay. This court is undoing all of those things. And it was interesting because Clarence Thomas said in his opinion that he wrote on Roe versus Wade, which he couldn't wait. He said we should revisit all of the cases that are based on that legal theory, and that legal theory is what's called the penumbra of rights. It's stating that even though the Constitution didn't specifically give you a right to an abortion or specifically give you a right to marry a person outside of your race or specifically give you a right to have children and not be castrated, which is Skinner versus Georgia, was that a person had stolen a chicken and he had done it 2 times. And on the 3rd time, he was considered a recidivist. That's the basis for the 3 strikes law. So he's considered a recidivist. So that is when they decided that they could castrate him so that he doesn't pass on his criminal proclivities. They thought those were genetically passed on. Wow. And the Supreme Court found that castration was not an acceptable punishment and stopped it. But there's no difference between the 3 strikes laws, because if you're in jail for life and you cannot have conjugal visits, then you've been castrated, right? You can't have children, right? But nobody's brought that up. You know, maybe I'll bring that up, but I don't know if that's going to fly. But anyway, this Supreme Court is really a rogue court. They've gone crazy because they're now looking into cases that, and so the Republicans are supporting them by bringing those cases. In order to hear a case, you can't just go and say, oh, I got to look back at this case. You have to have a present case and decide that we're going to decide this. And that's what they're doing. So that's why they've been continuously, the Republicans have been continuously suing on this Roe versus Wade situation, waiting to get this court that would finally overturn Roe versus Wade. It's been before the court many times in the last 40 years, but this is the first time that they've actually overturned it. But I blame, I'm sorry, but I blame Biden and Kamala Harris because they should have, in the very beginning of their term, the very first thing they should have done was stack the court, change the amount of people. It has been done before. The original court had 5 justices and it was changed to 9. Now they have to change it to at least 13. It has to be an uneven number, and there has to be enough that they can appoint judges to counteract this, because now it's 6-3. And it really was important that Trump got he got 3 picks, and that's what changed the court. He shouldn't have gotten 3 picks. Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have retired during Obama's term. She had cancer. She was in and out, sick all the time. It would have been the responsible thing for her. So I'm sorry, I'm not letting her off the hook, because she also co-signed on a decision. I don't know if you remember the Byron Allen decision. Byron Allen was suing, stating that it was a Section 1984. The Section 1983 is a violation of your civil rights, but 1984 had to do with contracting. During the period right after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction era, when we had a lot of people in Congress, they had given Black people the right to vote. They were in Congress and everything. This is before the Ku Klux Klan single-handedly changed all of that. But during that time period, the Constitution was, there were some amendments made to the Constitution, and one of them was regarding contracting, that Black people and former slaves, would be able to contract on an equal basis with other, people, with the government as well as with private parties. And Byron Allen's case was about, Byron Allen owns the Weather Channel and a lot of other stations, and he purposely got content neutral. He didn't go for BET. He didn't go for stations that have Black content, because he already knew they were discriminated against. And he said, and he told P. Diddy and he told them, look, this is actually for you too, because your company, Revolt and BET, for a long time, they weren't even carried as the regular channels. You know what I mean? They're not carried. You know how you subscribe to cable?
Yeah.
There's some channels that just come in, and those channels, the money you're paying goes towards paying royalties to those channels. Okay. They weren't on there. It took a while for them to get on there. And then what they did was they out of the billions of dollars that are spent, a ridiculous number, like less than 10 million, maybe less than 30 million, go to Black program channels.
Wow,
it's not even 1%. It's such a small amount. And he was trying to do a deal, and they knew he was Black, and he was trying to do a deal for the Weather Channel, and they did not want to do the deal. They wouldn't give him the kind of deal that they would give to somebody else that wasn't, Black. So he went and sued, and it went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg also, she joined in this decision, which stated that race had to be the only factor. So that means if they say, oh, I didn't like his tie, or, we don't really like weather. We don't think that's a good idea. So we didn't do it because we didn't like weather. We didn't want it. We didn't, if they can find any reason other than race. And before that, it was if race was a factor. And that's how it should be. Race should not be a factor in whether or not we're going to do this deal. But now, as long as they can show that there was any other factor that they also considered, even if it's facetious, even if it's a straw dog, they get off. So it's impossible now to bring a case for discrimination, because, and that affects other kinds of discrimination too, even probably employment discrimination, because if they can show any other factor other than race, then they're off the hook, because it has to be the sole factor. And that's ridiculous. That's unreasonable. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be a factor.
No,
So
that's
people don't
right.
realize, and the Supreme Court's doing a lot of messed up stuff right now. That,
So do you have,
during the George Floyd protest, there were 7 cases before the Supreme Court. Right while people were burning, having riots in the street, the Supreme Court got 7 cases on the issue of qualified immunity. They voted to uphold it.
wow.
That's what allows police to shoot people and get away with it. Qualified immunity. That's also what is stopping them from prosecuting Trump. Because if you're in office, when you do whatever the crime is, you have a certain amount of qualified immunity that, to do that. The other issue was that they get to use their subjective intent, not what's happening, but I feared for my life. And that's why I shot the person. Like in the case of Philando Castillo. The idea of a Black man with a gun, whether it was legal or not, scared this cop so much that when he told him, he did everything right. Philando Castillo said, look, I'm going to get, he was stopped for like having a tail light out. And he says, I'm going to get my driver's license and insurance, but I have to tell you, it's in my pocket. But just, full disclosure, I have a permit to carry a gun. Before he could get all of that out, when he said, I have a permit to carry a gun, 6 times, boom, 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 shot him. The idea of a Black man having a legal permit, even just having a gun, scared the crap out of him. And I have to tell you that the gun laws aren't the problem. Enforcement is. Out of 3 years, I have had only 1 white male that was prosecuted, and it was a misdemeanor for carrying a concealed weapon, and he didn't have it concealed. All the Black guys, they're sitting parked in their car. They're stopped because their windows are tinted, and then they search they search the whole vehicle and turn it upside down and find a gun. So I've gotten some of those. I've gotten motions to suppress, and I've successfully dismissed the case. But it seems that they only want to disarm Black men, because as long as they enforce the law the way they do, there's going to continue to be white males terrorizing people with guns, period, because they're not being disarmed.
So what are some like really words of encouragement or just some words of wisdom that you have for some of the people out there that are, wanting to become, to get into law and, want to be in criminal law? What's some, words of encouragement and just some words of wisdom that you can give them?
Well, going to law school can be difficult. It's hard, but I do this. I begin with the end in sight. This is one of the things that I did from the very beginning. I became a Barbary rep. So that's the bar review course in the first year. The first year courses are all bar courses. All those courses are going to be on the bar. That's another reason why it's harder to pass the bar, because 3 years ago, you studied most of the things that end up being on the bar, right? So you have to continuously refresh it. And if you're a rep, you can do that. You need to start studying, but it also helps you in your first year because you're studying to pass the bar, but you're studying the law and you're studying all the Black letter law. So when you go to take your tests and everything, it makes it easier. So that's one thing I would say is begin with the end in sight. One of the best majors for law is English, because you really have to know how to write and read and comprehend. I took the professional responsibility exam in the very beginning, and there's something called the multi-state that you can take. You can study for that. But part of the bar is this multiple choice questions that are very confusing, and that's why you want to be able to understand and comprehend. It stops a lot of people that English isn't their first language. Because they'll ask questions like, what is the most correct? So all 4 answers are correct. But now you have to figure out which one is the most correct.
Correct. Right.
Then they'll ask you another one, what is the least incorrect? All four answers are wrong.
Right.
But which one is the least incorrect? The least wrong. So that can totally baffle people. So, though that's part of it, the professional responsibility. And then they've added on when I started years ago was a performance exam. So you need to know how to write legal memorandum, legal motions, legal briefs, because they're going to ask you a question and give you 3 hours to research it and work it through and answer the question. Now I passed the bar the first time. One of the tactics that I used was, they give you scratch paper and you memorize the black letter law. You write it down as soon as you identify that it's a contracts question. You write down offer, acceptance, consideration. If there is no consideration, what is a valid substitute for consideration? Promissory estoppel, quantum merit. You put all this down, and I memorized it in my head. Write it down, and then you marry the facts to the law. So then you say an offer was made when so and so walked by the house, and the person said, "I will pay anybody $500 if they paint my house." So the person paints the house. Right. Offer, acceptance, and consideration. Now they ask the owner, "I need my $500. I painted your house." The owner says, "Well, I don't really like the way you painted the house." Or they'll say, "Okay, well, I didn't actually I didn't make a contract with you, but you did," because they accepted it and by conduct. And so you have to do all that, but you can't just jump to the conclusion. They want to know that you analyze the question properly. So a lot of people wouldn't pass the bar because they would go, "Oh yeah, there was a contract because they did that." You have to go, "An offer was made when so-and-so said this. Right. The offer was accepted by conduct when so-and-so did that. And there was consideration because the person said they would pay $500, and now it wasn't a written contract. So, you bring in the statute of frauds and everything. It doesn't work. You have to discuss all these scenarios, even if they're not part of, just to show that you're aware of it. It's called issue spotting. And when they grade your test, they only use about 2 to 3 minutes to grade it. And all they're looking for is, do I see the word consideration? Do I see the word offer, acceptance? Do I see quantum merit? Do I see this? If they don't see those words, you don't pass. So
that's interesting. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Well, Rhonda, we are getting to the end. I tell you, the time has just really flown by for us. Yeah. But can you please tell our audience how they can get in touch with you if, they're out there, they get into, some issues, anything, they need some help. How do they get in contact with you?
Well, you can contact me on my website, www.dixonjusticecenter.com. You can call me at 323-641-2731. And, those are the ways that you can contact me, or you can text me at that number as well. Also, if you do get stopped by the police, remember, have your driver's license and your insurance and your registration. Put those all together, like maybe in a little package, like in your insurance card package. Put those all together so that you can grab them easily before the cops even come to your car. And when you are at, I always have it and I just push it out the window. I don't even roll the window down all the way because I don't like the cops and I don't like the way they act. So I roll the window down about an inch and I push it through. I make sure my hands are where they can see them. And if you can, if you have a dash cam or you have your phone going, I'd record it because that's going to be important. Now, they're supposed to have body worn. A lot of times when they're doing the wrong thing and they know they're going to do the wrong thing, they turn it off or they lose it or it gets accidentally erased somehow. I always argue when that happens that, there's a problem here. That's a Brady motion because you're actually destroying evidence. They'll claim that it was oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, no, every time you go on a stop, that is supposed to be on. It's even supposed to be on in the car. And a lot of times when I get the body worn and I get the digital evidence from the car and stuff, they don't start it until sometime after they get out of the car. But I want to know what the dispatch said. I want to know if they targeted my client just because he was driving while black. If they're in the car and they say, pull the license plate on so and so and so and so, and they make statements like that N word or that, this, that, and the other, I'd like to hear that. That's going to be important for me as a defense lawyer, because I'm going to make the connection that it was racial profiling and that there was no probable cause to stop that person. Because in order to stop you, they have to have probable cause or reasonable suspicion that you committed a crime. And then they can't just search you because you have a broken tail light or your windows are tinted. They can't just search your entire vehicle for that. So, there's an issue of reasonableness, and there's an issue of our protected rights. Many times they also will take your cell phone, and they'll take it and they'll go through your cell phone, and they're not supposed to do that. They need a search warrant to do that.
Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Rhonda. Mm-hmm. Everybody definitely know your rights. And again, Rhonda, thank you for that, because make sure you have your license, your registration, all that stuff. If you are to get pulled over, you're not having to fumble or go through anything. So Rhonda, it has been just so amazing having you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Rhonda was our June cover girl. So you definitely want to subscribe to Phoenix Fitness Fanatics if you haven't already. So you can definitely check out Rhonda. When you subscribe, you get all the past issues. So you'll be able to see everybody from June 2021 until now with the one with Rhonda. So thank you so much, Rhonda. We appreciate you coming today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.